Welcome back to another episode of Rooted in Movement, the podcast. And I am beyond stoked for this episode because it is here. It is finally the 2021 Tokyo Olympics recap episode. And I've been waiting, a couple of weeks to do this one because I've been trying to gather my thoughts and introspect and reflect on the amazing trip that was Tokyo 2021 for the Olympics and be able to provide you all with not only some great stories from that experience, but then also some valuable insights and perspectives into how that trip went and the lessons that I learned along the way that you could then hopefully go ahead and execute in your own life, right? It's a lesson that I've learned from being at the highest stage of athletics and all the trials and tribulations and tests that actually were laid out before us with this very unique Olympic year. And what an amazing trip and a beautiful experience it has been, right? I need to first start off by saying, though, how grateful I am that I was actually able to go to Tokyo, right? To be able to experience the Tokyo Olympic Games in the first place in the past year and a half of COVID, where, we were actually anxious and doubtful that we're even going to be able to go in the first place. Like, were they actually going to happen? And what would the Olympics actually look like in this COVID era, right? So what I would like to do is begin where it all started. And for me, that was at the airport, right? Like any good trip, you have to get there somehow, right? So if you know me and follow any of my posts, you know that I really am an avid mover, especially when I'm traveling. And that part of me is never going to go away, right? It is that part of me that is really unmoving, which is an interesting juxtaposition where I'm always going to be that guy, right? Yes, I am that weird guy in the airport crawling around on the ground, using every chair, bench, and post available to him to get in some type of movement practice before getting on the plane, especially for these really long flights where it was actually 12 hours to be exact to get from San Francisco to Tokyo. Yes, I'm also that guy who actually does handstands in the airport. I know. It sounds so gross putting your hands on the ground when you're not even in a COVID era, right? We're talking the ground of the airport here, folks, right? We don't know what's crawling around in there, but actually there's a lot of research that shows it actually boosts our immune system. So we're going to let that one go. But actually I was also on a plane from, where was it now? It was from here to, I believe, Italy. And I actually do have photographic evidence of me doing handstands on the plane. Yes, on these big jets. It was actually in the galley between the bathroom and the place where they prepare all the food. So, looking back on that one now, that was probably pretty gross. But I wanted to get some blood flow to my upper body and get it up to my head. And actually the flight attendants applauded me for that one. So that was a cool little moment in my career, but I haven't done that one since. And the point behind this is that it's vitally important to move prior to being placed in a forced static and sedentary position for really hours on end. And my goal with this particular movement when we're traveling, have to sit on a plane for that long, is open up the hips, right? Primarily into extension. So essentially getting that leg behind the body and opening up the back. So that both the upper back and the low back, essentially taking the body into positions that it really isn't going to see or feel on the plane. So movement here is also important, not just for the positional side of things, right? But also for tissue quality and health. So it's used for getting the blood and the muscle pumping to help flush out any toxins and other garbage really sitting around in your system. And that's why it's also important to keep moving as much as possible on the plane so that your muscles and other tissues in the body don't turn into what looks like beef jerky if we were to take them and put them underneath a microscope. So yeah, that's right. They literally actually dry out. It's called like desiccation. So they dry out with a lack of movement because you're not getting any blood flow and nutritious oxygen and nutrients to them. So, which is why it's also important that I mentioned here that we actually drink as much water. We drink a shit ton of water actually, mixed in with some electrolytes. You guys know I like to use the Element salt sticks. Even if it means that you're getting up to pee every hour, you should be overdoing it on the water intake because we need to stay hydrated and we need to keep moving. And actually, I guess they kind of work one and the same. Drinking all that water is going to have to make you get up and go pee. So you have to get your steps in there too, which is awesome. I think that's a win-win situation. My next order of business, though, after getting on the plane and making sure all my movement health and nutritional health was taken care of and I was as comfortable as I could be, was actually to get some sleep, right? Because I knew that we were in store for really an adventure and a long journey upon landing in Japan. The plane ride was not going to be the problem. It was with what was coming next. So with all the new COVID regulations and the red tape that was in place, we had to prepare ourselves for a long haul. And, when we got there, we really weren't disappointed at all. Upon arrival, we were herded like cattle into a very narrow hall in the airport and separated by sport discipline. So all the shooting athletes were placed together, and there were about, I think, 12 or 13 of us on that particular plane ride. And from there, we were then counted off and each assigned a number, which we came to find out later was merely just to keep us all organized and separated in groups so our personal escorts could actually keep track of us for every step of the way of this extremely long and tedious process. So at this stage, we were playing the waiting game, really, which provided me more opportunities to move around, right? So all along while gathering applause from these Japanese volunteers for, quite frankly, my weird antics, doing all the same stuff I do in airports. I was on the ground, crawling around, opening up my hips, doing handstands, really weird shit. But I guess they thought it was cool. So yay for me, right? So we would essentially then move about 50 to 100 yards at a time through these various checkpoints that were interspersed by about 20 to 30 minutes worth of waiting for essentially processing the other groups that were ahead of us. So this went on for about 2 hours or so until we finally made it to our quote unquote check your paper station, right? Where they analyzed and documented and stamped our various COVID tests and passports and other documents that we needed prior to arrival in Japan. Actually, the funniest part about this station was that there were a number of signs warning us. Like, I swear to God, dude, they're posted up all around this room. There are these signs that were warning us of the danger of high fives. Yeah, let that sink in. High fives. So what did we naturally do, right? We naturally found any reason necessary to get excited and congratulate each other with high fives. And they didn't do anything. They just kind of looked and stared and give us those really scowling looks, really. But you know what? It was fun. It was entertaining for us anyway. And so from here, we were escorted to our very first spit station. And yeah, that's right. We were tested for COVID once again, but this time using a saliva antigen test, unless, of course, you had managed to eat or drink anything within the 30-minute window leading up to this test, in which case then you had won the grand prize of having them jam a cotton swab up into your brain again, which, you know what? It's quick, it's fast, but it's definitely not comfortable. And we had to do that twice before before even getting on the plane to come to Tokyo. These were self-administered tests, and I think I made myself cry both times. But of course, in this moment of the spit test, I had developed some performance anxiety. My mouth felt as dry as the Arizona desert that I live in. I was worried that I wouldn't actually produce enough spit at all to fill up the line that was actually in the vial. So I was worried. There was some anxiety there too. It's like, man, this is bringing me back to like high school football days where I got all excited before games and everybody had like the PGP, which for those of you that don't know, it's the pre-game poop where you got so nervous and anxious that your body had to evacuate everything. Well, that's essentially what my body was doing right now by evacuating all the spit from my mouth. But luckily enough, we had all overcome the obstacle and earned the right then to move on through the credentialing verification process and then finally out to customs, right? Which just to give you a timestamp at this point, we had made it to customs and we were already touching on about the 6-hour mark of this process. And, we get down to customs and everybody is trying to find their bags. They'd actually done a really good job of putting them into these little groups. And of course, I get down there and I found my suitcase, but couldn't find my physical therapy bag. So just to give you guys an example or an illustration of what this is, my PT bag is this giant bag that has all these accessory pockets on the outside and it houses my table folded up. So it's a big bag. It's an oversized bag. And even getting on the plane to come to Tokyo, the flight attendants or the desk people in Phoenix thought that it was a gun somehow because I was associated with USA shooting, despite the fact that the table literally had massage table written on the outside of it, and just spent 30 minutes explaining to them everything that was in there, from my dry needles to my pillows and towels and everything that I needed to help the athletes in Tokyo, and I couldn't find this bag once we actually got into Tokyo, which I was getting a little worried at this point. So I just started walking around to all the other groups of bags that they have sitting around, and wouldn't you know it, I found it in a different pile. It was in the cycling pile. So they had thought now this time that my PT table was a bicycle. So they had labeled it as such and put USA Cycling on the side of it, which, you know what, that's okay. I found it anyway, so no worries there. And we just carried on and got the tag switched out. But then we were definitely met with a new problem, and this problem came in the size of about a 20-pound beagle. Yep. This was Barnie the Beagle, who was actually sniffing around, not for drugs, which is what you typically have all these dogs in the airport sniffing for. No. Barnie, in this case, was sniffing for beef jerky. That's right. They did not want, which is understandable, any live plants or animals coming into Japan from the United States or any country for that matter. But they also were very, very adamant against beef jerky. But that's my main mode of snack. I'm a 205-pound, 6'1" guy. I need to get in my protein somehow. And I decided that this was going to be a battle worth fighting for. So luckily enough, though, for me, Barnie had zeroed in on my bag, of course, and it was in my backpack. So I'd actually had this one on the plane, but then I also had about 5 pounds of beef jerky in my suitcase as well. But Barnie focused on my backpack. So Barnie comes over sniffing, and the two dog handlers asked if I would open up my bag and take everything out of it. Of course, you know, me being the smart individual that I am, I had placed my beef jerky at the very bottom of the bag because it was the biggest, right? So it should go in the bottom, and all my nuts and protein bars and protein powders and gum and everything like that was placed on top. So I had intentionally just pulled out the nuts and the bars. I was like, oh, see, I just have snacks. And luckily enough, they took my word for it and pulled Barney by the collar and the leash and took him on to sniff all the other countries' luggage. So I had survived that near-death experience, because I don't know what I would have done without my beef jerky to have for the rest of this trip. But luckily enough, got through that. No problem. And we thought we were done at this point, right? But we had to go and now clear our guns, which is something that, you know, we're used to this on every trip that we go on. It always adds on about another hour to 90 minutes worth of time. It always takes longer because they have to inspect the guns, make sure you're not bringing anything in illegal, and account for all the ammunition. We finally get through that with just a small hiccup where we had some extra ammo here and there, but cleared that, no problem, added a few extra minutes onto our journey. And at that point, we were taken to go wait for our COVID test results. So mind you now, since they've taken the COVID test, it has been about 3 or 4 hours at this point. So one would expect them to have already gotten the results on those, but no. They weren't going to be in for what we found out to be a much, much longer time period. I think 3 or 4 more hours after that. So we were sitting in this holding room, and luckily enough, they had provided us with some snacks in the form of a variety of these really delicious chocolate treats, which I wasn't really mad at this point, because we both know, well, maybe you don't know, but two of my vices on this planet are caffeine in the form of coffee and chocolate. So you can give me all the types of chocolate. At this point, we were all starving anyway, so we pounded this shit, right? And which is, why I was so worried about getting my beef jerky past Barney the Beagle, because I needed something else inside my body besides chocolate and water at this point, right? So just to give you now another update on a timestamp, we had landed at 3 p.m. in the afternoon in Tokyo. And when we finally arrived to the Olympic Village, after about an hour-long bus ride, when we left the holding area and they finally cleared all of our COVID tests, we finally got to the Olympic Village and the sun was coming up. Okay, so I'm going to let you do the math on that one, just how long we were in that airport for, from start to finish. Now, the first full week in Tokyo was a very trying and testing time for me. I kind of mentioned this at the beginning of the podcast, and it was very testing in a lot of different ways. Okay, so we had some internal conflicts and confidential challenges that I'm not really allowed to speak on in this moment, so we'll just have to leave it at that. But there were a lot of lessons learned that week for sure. It was about 6 or 7 days of lots and lots of life lessons learned at that moment. So the first one being resiliency through resistance. Okay. So there were many hurdles that I actually had to jump over and walls that were built on my path of success in that first week. And instead of getting caught up in the frustration and playing the victim card, I chose to take ownership and responsibility for the cards that I have been dealt. And no, they weren't great, but I did have an ace in the hole. And that ace in the hole was actually my breath. So as you may be well aware of, emotions can actually get the best of us from time to time. We're all subject to it, myself included. And this causes us to think and make really impetuous decisions in a very irrational way. Decisions that cause a domino effect of blame and finger pointing that really end up digging us into a deeper hole and ultimately solving none of the problems that were in front of us. None whatsoever. Because they're too emotional, right? Our judgment is too clouded, right? So instead, I use my breath to create space, to calm the sympathetic flight or fight chemicals surging through my body. And yes, I did actually want to fight a few people that week as well. But I knew that if I could breathe, then I could choose, and I could choose appropriately. This breath work looked, in case you're wondering, a lot of deep inhales. So it looked like a lot of deep inhales and long exhales. So these long exhales are really what engage our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest. And I use a variety of different techniques, including a 4-7-8 technique, which is a 4-second inhale, 7-second hold at the top, an 8-second exhale. And there's another one that's a hold and sip technique, where we actually hold our breath at the top of the inhale, try and sip in a little bit more, and then once again go with those long, slow exhales while breathing out through pursed lips. And each one of these really, they have their own usefulness, but regardless, the purpose was to slow me down enough to actually critically think and problem solve, which is the second lesson here, really. It's the importance of critical thinking and thinking outside the box, for that matter, right? Because many times the right answer, the right solution to the problem is simpler than we'd expected and simpler than we'd originally thought, because we end up overanalyzing our situation, right? We create this paralysis by analysis, which then leads into indecisiveness, which once again gets us nowhere with our problems. Instead, utilizing the breath as a way to remove the clutter, right? The clutter from our minds and help provide clarity to our thoughts. In order to effectively visualize the connection, so that pattern recognition piece, and the solution that is often really just hiding right in front of our faces, right? So the third lesson that I learned that week is I learned that tenacity fuels success. Say that again, tenacity fuels success. And I've actually I first heard this line from my partner, Kendall Merritt. She has been telling me this for the past 3 years now. So my ability to be successful that week came down to my ferocious hunger to fight for what was right, what I thought was best, not only for myself, but for my athletes, and what decisions then were needed to be made and action steps that need to be taken in order to get the job done, which was our mission there, right? Our mission was, to win medals collectively as a team. And then my mission was to be able to support the athletes in every single possible way that they needed to make them successful. And one of the biggest issues that we came across was my ability to actually access my athletes in a way that actually allowed me to be the most effective at my job, which includes the hands-on treatment, the physical preparation, the warming up, the coaching, but most of all, it's the in-person one-on-one connection that's actually needed to transmute the right energy, the right perspective, the right mindset, and the right physical embodiment that would be the most impactful for enhancing their performance on the shooting fields at that particular moment in time, based on so many unique contextual and environmental factors. So individuality is really the name of the game here at this point. And at the end of the day, my tenacity, my stillness through breath, and my ability to see patterns and think outside the box, along with that resiliency factor, all combined together for the greatest lesson of all. The lesson being that I want all of you to really take this lesson to heart. I want all of you to internalize it and digest it and embody it. And that lesson is to stay grounded in your purpose. I'm going to say that again. It's to stay grounded in your purpose, because staying grounded in your purpose helps keep you in integrity and helps you make decisions that are in alignment with what you want to achieve, the purpose that you are here to serve. And my purpose in that moment for this particular trip was to be there for my athletes, right? To give them anything and everything that they needed to be successful in their Olympic endeavors. And that particular purpose of mine shined light on the path that I needed to take, including finding a loophole in the system. That's right, I did some covert ops missions. So it included a loophole in the system that actually allowed me to achieve everything I needed to do and to be there for my athletes in my fullest capacity. So without going into too much detail, this little covert op mission really, it involved me getting up at 4:00 in the morning every single day to take a bus from my hotel to the Olympic Village, just in order to walk about 1.5 miles, to jump on another bus with the athletes that took me to the shooting venues and allowed me to bypass security, right? That's the key point. Allow me to bypass security, which is where a lot of my hangups were actually occurring. And I did that for 3 straight weeks. And yes, that involved a lot of early mornings and long days. It took me away from my own movement practice, and it drastically limited my sleep, because we weren't getting back to sometimes, 7, 8 o'clock at night, and then you're having to eat dinner and wind down for bed and everything. We'd have some coaches meetings from time to time to prepare for the next day or prepare for the next level of competition. But at the end of the day, it was all worth it. And ironically enough, it energized the shit out of me, right? It energized me because I had figured out a solution that allowed me to fulfill my purpose by providing the necessary care for my athletes. But the key part is that I figured it out. I had taken ownership of it, right? And boy, oh boy, was it all worth it when I did that, right? At the end of those 3 weeks, those athletes, the ones that I fought for, that I would do anything for to help them achieve their goals, those athletes secured 6 medals for our great nation. 3 golds, 2 silvers, and a bronze. So you can check my math there. 3 + 2 is 5, + 1, 6. Good. I joke, but I joke all the time. They didn't teach us how to do math at Duke, where I got my doctorate from. No shots taken at Duke. Love you guys. I'm just terrible at math. My little brother got all those genes. But let me tell you this. I cannot even begin to describe in words the energy that I felt in those Olympic medal winning moments. I can't. I am still, to this day, almost 4 weeks later now, trying to figure out words to describe that energy. So instead of, I'm just going to recall and recap what this all kind of looked like from my perspective, right? So the very first medal we won was actually by a young rifle shooter named William Shaner. So not only did he win the very first gold medal for all of Team USA, right? He also set an Olympic record in the men's 10-meter air rifle. And in that moment, he truly set the tone for the rest of our athletes of what was possible. And the very next day, Lucas Kaczynski and Mary Tucker took a silver medal in the air rifle mixed team event to continue the winning streak for us on a day-to-day basis. This was then followed up even 2 days later by our USA men's and women's ski team. They completely swept the podium. Right, we took the entire skeet event by winning gold in both men's and women's individual skeet. So First Lieutenant Amber English out of Fort Benning, Georgia, and the U.S. Army Marksmanship Unit actually won her first gold, followed directly by Vincent Hancock, who took his 3rd Olympic gold medal. Man, oh man, was that a freaking accomplishment, right? And actually the emotion was so high for these 2 individuals. Amber's win in particular was fueled by her, really take no shit attitude, which I absolutely love about her, and the love actually of her late father, who she dedicated her win to, which was absolutely beautiful. And I couldn't be more proud of this tough and resilient and actually deeply loving woman. So Vinny's win, on the other hand, marked his 3rd gold medal, right? Adding to his gold medals from both Beijing in 2008 and London in 2012. And I am so immensely proud of this man, who is really the epitome of what it means to be an Olympian representing our great nation, right? He lives and trains with intention and possesses a very purposeful state of mind. And all of his hard work, dedication, perseverance, and sacrifice has culminated in this ultimate reward of a gold medal, of standing atop that podium as our national anthem plays with the American flag blowing in the wind. Just pause for a moment and put that picture in your mind. And then feel into your body of what that would actually feel like to you personally, to be able to be there and witness that, right? As a spectator, number one. But number two, put yourself in the shoes of Vinny or Amber at this point, of actually winning those medals and representing our country as our national anthem plays. Just gave me chills thinking about it again. All right, I am so grateful to have the opportunity to work with both of them, and then actually Vinny to help him reach his goal over the past 5 years. So I've been working with Vinny for a long time now at this point, helping him with everything he needs, from physical rehabilitation when he gets all the wiggles and the niggles and the aches and pains, into his strength and conditioning routines, mindset work, and also even nutrition. And Vinny, if you haven't checked him out now, he looks amazing. And he's single, ladies. So if you want to go out there and look up Mr. Vincent Hancock, 3-time gold medalist, he is single and ready to mingle, folks. So anyway, all of that long travel, the long training weekends, the obstacles that we encountered, and the energy spent are really nothing in comparison to witnessing that momentous moment for both Vinny and Amber. So many memories were made at that moment already. Right, we just finished up skeet, and there are so many more yet to come. So as skeet competition actually came to a close, we shifted our focus to men's and women's trap, which was also accompanied by the remnants actually of a typhoon, right? So a typhoon that left our shooting fields flooded, right? So luckily enough, we did not get a direct hit, but this means, this mess of this typhoon actually it cleared up a little bit, like right before competitions actually started, but we had a practice in it, and it was actually had to be cleaned up by multiple teams, Japanese volunteers that literally used they literally used like a 3-foot by 3-foot sponge, and maybe it was like, I don't know, 6 inches in thickness as well. Okay, but they used these sponges to soak up all the water that was laying on the fields and dump them into buckets. At this point, actually, I should also mention why they had to do this, which was because that the shotgun range, actually all the shooting ranges for that matter, were built on military tarmac. So it was completely flat, leaving nowhere for the water to actually drain to. So this tarmac was also covered by this giant green tarp that, well, collected a lot of water underneath it. And when the sun finally came back out, it created what I can only describe as a convection oven effect, right? Drastically increasing the perception of heat and making it literally melt my shoes. That's how hot that it felt underneath your feet because of that water just baking in the sun and releasing that heat and energy up out of the ground. Unbelievable, right? And actually, speaking of natural disasters, we not only did we experience a typhoon, but on the very last day there, we actually experienced an earthquake that came at like 6 o'clock in the morning on our last day and shook our hotels, which I slept through most of it. Apparently, I'm a pretty heavy sleeper, but it's pretty wild to experience 2 national disasters in 1 3-week trip. Okay. So despite the adversity of these new elements with the rain and the earthquakes and all that, one of our women's trap Olympians, Kaylee Browning, made it into the final and fought a pretty brutal battle that resulted in a silver medal win for her and Team USA. And at that point, that brought the medal count to 5 for USA shooting so far at the Tokyo 2021 Olympics. Now, Kaylee's confidence and her tenacity and her perseverance are really second to none. And that's what fueled her success in Tokyo. She played her game, right? And she was very process oriented and stayed in her lane and stayed grounded enough in her body to come out on top with that one. And I am so grateful to be part of her journey over the past 5 years as well. So same time frame as Vinny here. And I'm looking forward to witnessing more and more of her success in the future as well. Now, the last bronze medal that came in for Team USA came from the hard work of Brian Burrows and Maddie Burnell. So this was our mixed team trap duo that fought a pretty stressful battle in the final, once again, to take down the Czech Republic, whose team consisted of a partnership between the gold medalists for both men's and women's trap. So they took the individual medals, and we beat them in the bronze medal match to take home that medal. Okay, so I witnessed both Maddie and Brian in that moment. I mean, geez, man, the energy felt was just undescribable again. But I felt so elated for them because I've witnessed both Maddie and Brian grow and evolve so much as kick-ass humans and as high performers over the past few years as well, about the past 3 years now at this point. So it was such a magical moment to watch Maddie shine. She is actually one of the best moving young athletes I've ever had the pleasure of working with, and is truly a beautiful sight to watch her shoot. So if you get a chance to, I highly encourage it as well. Look up some videos of her shooting. It's beautiful. As for Brian Burrows, this man literally came out of retirement 3 years ago to pick his gun back up and give this whole thing another run. So, I mean, damn, man, aren't we glad that he did, right? So once again, I am so proud to have helped him on his journey and really truly call him a great friend as well. So this, in and of essence, brought our USA shooting medal count up to 6. And that concluded our Tokyo 2021 Olympic adventure. 6 medals. This is the most we've ever taken back, period. Prior to this, we've brought back 4 medals, but we jumped that up to 6. So our goal was 4. We surpassed that by 2, which is just so freaking cool to witness. And also all the lessons that I learned along the way and then the energy felt it's second to none, right? So just to kind of recap, the lessons that I learned from this amazing trip were, number one, that I have a lot more innate leadership skills inside of me that I really ever knew, at least to that high of a level of an experience on that particular stage, for that matter, which was extremely empowering and super energizing as well. Lesson number 2 is that staying grounded in your purpose is the key to success in really any area of life. Number 3, breath and movement variability are arguably the 2 most important factors for success in all areas of life, hands down. Number 4, this goes without saying, but I'm once again so grateful to live the life that I live, working with these special group of kick-ass, high-caliber athletes and even better humans. And number 5, last but not least, this is the most important lesson, hands down. Mark my words, we are going to bring home at least 10 medals in Paris 2024. Here we come, baby. Let's freaking go. See it coming already. I can feel it. I can feel it, folks. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed these insights into the stories from my very first Olympic Games. And just a heads up, it's my intention to actually grab as many of these athletes and coaches as possible to bring them on to here, onto this podcast, and have them tell their stories along with athletes and coaches and medical providers from all the other countries as well, and to be able to get them to tell their stories and to hear their experiences and their perspectives from all over the world. So stay tuned for that in the near future. Lastly, please go rate and review this podcast on your platform of choice so we can get this information into as many ears as possible, into the ears of more people, and help them transform the way we move together. So until next time, remember that your success in life, whatever that looks like to you, is rooted in movement. I am Thor.